What if I told you that redesigning a drive-through experience has almost nothing to do with fast food? Because the second you try to rebuild the experience, you realize you're not just building a restaurant, you're building a system. And underneath that system are manufacturers, engineers, automation companies, software, fabrication, and infrastructure most people never think about. That's what fascinates me about modern manufacturing. People only see the final experience. They never see the industrial ecosystem underneath it. Today I'm joined by Rob from Ping, and we're talking about what happens when you try to redesign one of the most familiar experiences in modern life from the ground up. Rob, welcome to Manufacturing Runs the World.
Hi, Justin. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks again. First of all, what felt broken about the traditional drive-through experience for you?
About 3 years ago, I had three teenage daughters in high school all at the same time. And I'm not really a drive-through guy, right? I see that long line and I know the inefficiency. I try to avoid it at all costs. And they forced me to go through the drive-through a bunch of times. And I tell you, I have the worst luck when it comes to drive-through. It's like a coin flip whether or not I get something remotely close to what I ordered. And so I was whinging about this one day when my co-founder Jane, she turned to me and she said, like with your robotics and food background, we could probably do something cool here. And she had the customer experience background. So we started looking at it and it's a huge opportunity. Like there's a lot of other people like me that either won't stop at all at a drive-through or they see the long line and leave. That's like 30% of potential customers leave. That was an $8 billion opportunity if you're just talking about drinks in the drive-through. And so for us, that was a big, wow, that is something worth going after. And, we started looking at the designs and the concepts and figured out, oh my gosh, this is a very achievable thing with not a ton of invention, but a little bit in just a couple of key areas.
Yeah, so you didn't look at it from like this needs to be some type of app to better the experience. You totally looked at it from a systems, how can I solve this from a systems standpoint?
Oh, yeah. Like we started with a vision, really, to say, okay, we want you to leave Ping actually feeling victorious. We want you to be happy to go through it. This one part of your day went smoothly. And we kind of based everything off of that. We started thinking about like, what kind of experience would you really want to have? It's like, I just want to get in and get out. And maybe if it's a little bit cool and with the presentation, then I just want a really great product. I don't want to pay too much for it. Some kid to be rude to me and then ask for a tip. Like, I don't want any of that, right? I don't want any of the noise. Take out all the noise and just make this cool, smooth experience. And so that's how we came up with it. And, part of that was coming up with the concept for the sensor augmented geofence that, supports that, right? So we wanted you to just share your location. And when you get close, that's when we start making your order. And then we can see you coming up in line. So we don't have to ask you, you don't have to interact or anything like that. It's just, okay, here you go. Off you go. Just grab it and go and, solve a lot of problems like, the height adjusting windows. We solved the ATM reach problem. So you literally don't even actually have to stop your wheels. We've had some customers that have managed to do that. Just drive up, grab it, and their wheels never actually stop rotating. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is that a differentiator? Because I believe there's other robotics style drive-through systems out there, but you've definitely used your background to differentiate yourself. Is that through the geofencing and through the robotics server?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are two of our really key pieces of IP, the stuff that we've submitted patents on and that sort of thing. And there are others out there that do, you scan a QR code and then in a minute or two, your thing will pop out. But we wanted to look at something that is not just a coffee solution, right? We're thinking of a customer pickup solution. So if you start thinking in terms of autonomous micro retail, this is a solution that starts with coffee and then we can move to packaged snacks, convenience items, automated food. Like then you can start to expand all your offerings. You just have to nail that customer experience first, something that you can automate and that people will enjoy because it's kind of a known thing for people to do, to order on an app, go grab a drink somewhere in a little kiosk. The fact that it happens to be automated is just like a, kind of an us twist on it, but also the way we're able to make sure we can fulfill that order as quickly as possible and, be able to resequence quickly and not have, a bunch of flustered people. You could do it manually, but you need a lot of people to do it and they'd get flustered and all that sort of thing. Robots just run programs. So they just get their sequence, they have all their ingredients and poop, 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 out it goes.
Yeah. So you were thinking about this from bettering that experience for all drive-throughs of any kind from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was starting with coffee, but also we wanted something that's super scale. That's another architecture guideline that we had. One of our tenets is making sure that this would be scalable, not only from a manufacturability perspective of the pods themselves, but also something that we could support. We're going to have to resupply all these things. How are we going to get these containers in there and get them out and then clean them and all that sort of thing? Like, we had to think through all of these pieces in order to make sure that we'd be able to scale quickly later. And that includes, making it cost effective enough. So we're targeting, 100, 125K per pod, which is actually quite reasonable, compared to, some large franchisees, have to pay $1 million if they want to have a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. You have to kind of be a millionaire already. And we wanted something that was affordable, could scale quickly, and something we could franchise and make it a best in class franchise. So, other guys like me with a little bit of money and a lot of motivation could actually own this and be a part and grow with us.
Most manufacturers are sitting on better marketing than they realize. It's in their sales calls. It's in their production meetings. It's in the way their team solves problems every single day. But none of it gets captured. None of it gets distributed. None of it turns into visibility or pipeline. That's what we fix at Manufacturing Growth Systems. We help manufacturers turn the knowledge already inside their business into content, distribution, and sales. Because the world doesn't need more generic marketing. It needs to hear from the companies actually building things. What did those early prototypes look like for you?
The driveway built prototypes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we first started off, we started with a lot of customer discovery, right? Like, we spent a lot of time just watching and learning and, trying to collect data. It's so funny what you see when you watch people in the drive-thru. They're brushing their teeth or reading a book. Like, people have modified their behaviors to adapt to this insanely long waits that are just normal in a drive-through because they haven't changed in 70 years, right? We did a lot of observing up front. We started sketching out what our concept would look like. And then we actually started doing like the pitch deck and a dream thing, where we went around and we would tell every VC that would listen about our idea. And we did that for, 5 or 6 months or something like that, which is great for honing your idea and honing your pitch a little bit, but not great for fundraising. And one day my co-founder Jane told me, listen, we need a proof of concept. We need to bootstrap something that shows people the idea. And so what we did was focus on all the customer touch points. So we built an app, we built the sensor augmented geofence, we built these height adjusting windows. So if you're in a tall truck, it would go up. And if you're in a little sports car, it would present the order, lower down so you could easily grab it. And we built this into a trailer. We built the trailer in our driveway. But Jane and I were inside this trailer when we ran the pilot operating, like making drinks, pushing buttons. It was all Wizard of Oz, don't look behind the curtain sort of thing. But we wanted people to feel the experience that we were envisioning. And they did. And the response was overwhelmingly great. Just 5-star reviews across the board. We got a ton of feedback on what people liked and didn't like. And mostly they liked stuff. And so that was enough for us to raise our pre-seed. And using that pre-seed, then we were able to start getting into, okay, now we're going to build the bots that go inside.
Yeah, so talk to me about all the pieces that go in to make one of these pods. Obviously you have to source robotics and other pieces to make this all happen. I know you have an interesting story about how you plan to manufacture these and have the maintenance and upkeep of these.
Yeah, it all starts with a 40-foot shipping container. We got a guy up in Lee, New Hampshire that chops that down for us and puts an end cap on it. We insulate it, so we turn it into a giant refrigerator, add all the refrigeration and electronics. We run everything off of 24 volts. Automation loves nice, clean DC power. If you can get that built into your system, you save yourself just a ton of headaches later. And also it adds the ability to operate when you lose power. Power interrupts. Dirty power is like a major challenge for a lot of people, but not for us. Add in all of the power system. And then after we have that insulation and all the nice wipeable surfaces inside and the floor built up, then we go in and we build 2 robotic work cells. And those are, aluminum frame work cells. And then we start adding in all the automation. So ours looks like a giant 3D printer for drinks, right? It's a rail-mounted system, very low cost, basically the same kind of technology you use for a 3D printer. So a lot of off-the-shelf parts, a lot of lower cost systems. And then we have all of our dispensers that we made ourselves, a lot of 3D printed parts. And so we have about 600 3D printed parts inside of our system. So as we were building our first fully automated pod, we're like, oh, I think we need a little printer farm. So, we got a few bamboos and put them in our basement, and we were just changing reels at all times and popping parts out and assembling these panels with all the dispensers and that sort of stuff on it. Then it came together, and we were able to start integrating with the containers that we had and start testing. And of course, then it becomes a big software challenge to integrate the two systems. Just recently, we actually got our second robot in parallel, simultaneously with the first one that we had running. So now we're jumping into those, kind of interesting sequencing logics. And, you have cars coming in. Now you have multiple orders that can be going on at the same time. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. So then you get into like programming paths of the robots too, right? So make sure there's no path collision, or at least you have to separate them logistically far enough so that they're not running into each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the two work cells are completely independent. And that's a big part of our system, is making sure we have that redundancy, right? So when you think about being able to operate, long-term 24/7, really three big prongs to our approach, right? We want a very robust and simple design. As simple as a robot as you can make is usually the best robot. Like if you look at Amazon Kiva systems, I mean, the bots on the floor are actually very, very simple robots, and they're pretty stupid. They have a very short mission that they get. They bump into another robot. They might honk a little bit and that sort of thing, but they're just following stickers on the floor, fiducials, right? It's a very simple system when you really stop and think about it. And that's how we tried to design ours. We don't have a big complex 6 degree of freedom arm that requires a ton of path planning and keep out areas and all that sort of thing. Like we're just moving around on a couple of axes, and if you need to move something off of that plane, then you have a third axis that that it's kind of nice that we have an elevated window. So when we're done making a drink with our XY axis, the Z axis is lifting the drink off of the end effector into the window. And so like those sort of things like help you keep it a very simple system. But so robust and simple, then redundancy. So we had the two work cells that work independently, and then having a great support system.
Cool. I was totally imagining like a a couple 5-axis arms in there doing all the drinks and stuff, like a little robot barista arm.
Yeah, it's and you see a lot of these. Like there's a lot of automated coffee that looks like that, right? They took the barista out, they put expensive espresso machines and a 6-DOF in there, and just said, oh, okay, I'll just program this. But the way I look at it, I look at the cost per degree of freedom, right? And so when you have a 6-DOF in there, like a pretty nice one, like a UR, you probably 40, 50, if you got a big 160K, right? And so you're putting a ton of CapEx in there for what is not super high rate machine. It's not the most reliable system compared to like a rail mounted. It's not terribly cost effective. You end up throwing all that CapEx on it, and you're not even at a higher rate, right? You're not faster than a human. It still takes it however long an espresso machine takes to make the drink. And those automated espresso machines themselves, they can run 40 or 50 grand, those Eversys systems, right? And so the costs that we wanted to have for our total pod would have been sunk into those big, CapEx expenditures, right? So buying those big chunks just didn't make sense for us. So we had to look at it and think of it differently.
If you believe manufacturing deserves more attention, more respect, and a bigger voice, go to manufacturingruntheworld.com and join the community. That's what we're building here. A place for the people, companies, and stories behind the products, the machines, the parts, the processes that keep the world moving. Because manufacturing does run the world, but too often the people doing the work are invisible. So join the community, and at the very least, follow Manufacturing Runs the World wherever you're watching or listening. Help us amplify the industry that builds everything. If we think about this kind of changing the landscape of drive-thrus forever, how does that kind of affect cities and the footprints of restaurants and traffic flow and even real estate? Like I gotta imagine you've thought through some of these compounding effects of how this affects entire cities?
Honestly, like cities aren't our first target. Outside of the city is our first target, the more urban areas. One of the biggest correlations we found between whether or not you're a Starbucks or a Dunkin' or whatever, like whatever coffee shop you go to, the number one correlation is how close you live to a shop. The closer you can get to a customer's home increases your chance of being their number one significantly. Like it's not small, it's a lot, right? And so what we envision is, the nice thing about our, tiny footprint, small occupancy costs, much lower labor costs, but it allows us to get much closer to people. So we don't need the density. We only need to sell, between 100 and 125 drinks a day to break even. Whereas like a big coffee shop, like a big Dunkin's, is like 500 or 600. We're able to basically create a perimeter around all the high density areas where you'll see all those Starbucks and Dunkin's, and we'll have a perimeter around them between those places and where people are living and commuting into, right? So that's how we see it, is we're going to catch them before they get to that high density area, and we'll be closer to their home. We'll be paying lower occupancy costs, like we will be basically right on that outer perimeter.
I'm just imagining myself, if I had access that quickly to donuts and coffee. Oh my goodness. I know it's closer to me, but you're absolutely right. I think the 2 or 3 coffee shops that I go to on a regular basis are really just because they're closest to me.
Yeah, exactly. Proximity is huge. And so now if you can get like way more dispersed and much, much closer to people's homes, it's convenient for them. Chances are one of those customers is going to be a franchisee owner, so it benefits them. And that's the other thing I like about this system is we're going to support this with a hub and spoke model. So we'll do all the resupply and all that sort of thing. And so for each hub that we set up, we'll have 10 pods out there. So the franchisee won't actually have to learn robotics. They won't have to do all the logistics behind it. They really have to find a site, put up the CapEx to build the pod, and then get people there. Be a site host, be the local face of the brand. People won't look at it as, oh, that's a ping pod over there. It's like, oh, that's Justin's ping pod. He got into it. You should go talk to him. It's a great story. You'll love it. It's wicked cool. And the drinks are awesome and it's super convenient, right? I think that is just a much more interesting story and a much more interesting way to grow.
Yeah, totally. As you grow, right, what kind of operational challenges do you think you're facing once you launch this nationally across multiple locations?
Yeah, I mean, once the robotics gets boarding, it becomes a big operations challenge, right? And we want to maintain the same high level of quality. What we never want to do is grow so fast we diminish the customer experience. So, making sure we grow very methodically, but quickly will definitely be the challenge. So the way we're going to approach this, we have one pod now, we're bringing it up. Once we feel really great about how that's running, we're going to go through a big design process to make it more manufacturable, make 3 pre-production units, I would call them, for paying next year, get those out there and support them, make sure we have a great support process and a great setup for our hubs so that we feel really confident being able to expand into another area, build another hub, and then start doing the franchise model there. So we're trying to be as intentional for each step as we can. And then once we have the playbook and the process laid down, then it's just a matter of getting a really good ops guy. I got my eye on one from Amazon, from back in the day. So it's kind of nice having a pretty solid network of people that you work with that you're like, all right, when we get to that scale, that's my guy.
I'm stealing them. Yeah, I have a couple people that I'm.
You have a 12, like it was a month or two ago. I was like, you got a 12-month clock, man. Set it.
Yep.
We're coming for you, man. It's like, okay.
As you launch this kind of hub and spoke model, how does that kind of affect local business, right? You'll have vendors and potentially other manufacturing partners that are going to help you not only build, but maintain these things. About how many different companies go into maintaining this hub and spoke model?
Well, for just building the pods themselves, eventually we'll probably get to a 2 or 3 subcontract manufacturer type model. With the type of manufacturing that we're doing, since it's in a larger pod format, not a lot of CMs really want to have that in their building, but they want to do all the electronics on the inside, right? So, kind of finding those matchups will be interesting. I suspect in most cases we'll be at 2 or 3 to build the pods themselves. But in terms of the hubs, they're actually relatively simple hubs. That's nice thing about what we're doing. We don't need a complex kitchen with hoods and all that sort of thing. So we're looking pretty closely at actually just manufacturing our hubs as well into containers, and then just have those basically pre-built. You drop the hub into, the type of area that you're looking for. Also pretty low cost land because it won't have good frontage or anything like that. And then do all of our storage out of, trailers that we back up to this hub. And so I think that will have, probably fewer vendors. There'll be transportation, people that do all the, kitchen type deliveries, like Cisco will be there as well. You'll have a laundry service because we'll always be, rotating cloths to, wipe down the inside of the pod and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we'll probably have, 3 or 4 water supply right now for us is being delivered, and that'll turn into, more of a filtration system with automated filling. So things will get a little smoother and a little more complex than the type of operations that we have right now.